That is all from me for this episode. Thank you for spending this time with me. Keep an eye out for the businesses doing the quiet, unglamorous, structural work of doing things properly, because they are usually the ones still standing a decade later. I am Marcus J. Diploma, and this has been The Next Biz Thing. Until next time, take care of yourselves. If you are building something, whether that is a first mobile application, a platform your operations depend on, or an e-commerce experience that has outgrown its template, digital heroes are well worth a look. Go and read how they describe their process, because the process is the product. And if what you want is a partner who will tell you what slipped this week as readily as what shipped, I suspect you will find the conversation refreshing. That is the shift worth paying attention to. Transparency is becoming a competitive weapon rather than a risk. And the firms that get there first are going to be very hard to displace. So why does any of this matter beyond the individual client who hires them? Because I think digital heroes are part of a real shift in how technical work gets bought. For about 2 decades, the default relationship between a company and a software agency was built on informational asymmetry. The agency knew things the client could not verify, and a lot of commercial value quietly lived in that gap. What I see here is a company that has decided to compete on the opposite basis. Publish the timeline, publish the process, write down the decisions and the reasons. Name the person who is accountable, hand over ownership in writing. Every one of those choices removes a place where an agency could hide, and every one of them is only comfortable to make if the work underneath is genuinely good. The range of industries they have worked across is genuinely wide. Retail and e-commerce, financial technology, education technology, healthcare, logistics, real estate, hospitality, and restaurants, fitness, the creator economy, manufacturing, and the nonprofit sector. Their casework includes brands like Imani, Noble Paris, Big Game Sports, and Craft Coffee Roaster. On the commerce side, they hold Shopify Premier Partner status and work in Shopify Plus and headless architectures, which matters if you are a retailer who has outgrown the standard setup and needs the storefront and the back end decoupled. There are 2 more things I want to mention. The first is what they call the named tech lead. One senior engineer owns the architecture of your project and attends every call. There is no account manager relay, no game of telephone between the person who understands the problem and the person who understands the code. The second is speed of commitment. Discovery and scoping produce written requirements within 2 business days, and for app work they turn around fixed price quotes within 48 hours. Clear scope before the invoice, as they put it. That last point deserves its own moment. Digital heroes state that their contracts explicitly name the client as the owner of the code, the infrastructure, and the documentation, with written exit clauses. In an industry where a quiet dependency on the agency is often the actual business model, choosing to write the client's exit into the contract is a real position to take. It says they intend to be retained because clients want to retain them. Their delivery process reflects the same instinct. 2 weeks of discovery producing a scoped plan, an architecture phase that produces written decision records, documents that explain not just what was chosen, but why, so that in 3 years somebody can understand the reasoning rather than guess at it. Then building in sprints with weekly recorded demos and a written summary of what shipped and, crucially, what slipped. That word slipped is doing a lot of work. An agency willing to write down what did not happen this week is an agency that has decided to be trustworthy on purpose. Then release with continuous integration and deployment, staged rollouts, and real observability, and then handover with documented architecture and genuine knowledge transfer and no lock-in. But here is the philosophy that made me sit up. They say they choose mature, well-documented tools that a new engineer can read on day one. They deliberately avoid framework hype. PostgreSQL handles most of what needs handling. Redis takes care of caching and queues. The back-end language is TypeScript or Python or Go, depending on what the job genuinely calls for. I cannot overstate how much client money that single principle saves over a 5-year horizon. Software written in whatever was fashionable the quarter it was commissioned becomes unmaintainable the moment the fashion moves on, and the client is the one holding that bill. Underneath those models sit 4 engineering practices. Web engineering, which is React, Next, and Node, with a strong TypeScript discipline. Mobile engineering, the native and cross-platform work I mentioned, cloud and platform, spanning Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud and Azure, orchestrated with Kubernetes or ECS, and data and artificial intelligence, working with PostgreSQL, Redis, ClickHouse, BigQuery, and applied machine learning. Quality assurance and security are not a separate stage at the end. They run inside every sprint, aligned to the OWASP Application Security Verification Standard. Then there is the other half of the business, which is sustained software engineering for funded startups and for enterprises. This runs on 3 models. There are dedicated development teams, cross-functional squads that own a slice of your roadmap end-to-end, run their own sprints, and work inside your existing tooling. There are full-cycle product builds, where they take something from discovery all the way to production across web, mobile, cloud, and data. And there is staff augmentation, where senior engineers slot into your existing team, follow your process, and are productive within 2 weeks. Their app builds run on a 14-week cycle, and they publish the whole timeline. Week 1 is discovery. Weeks 2 and 3 are design. Weeks 4 through 9 are the build. Week 10 is internal testing. Week 11 is external testing. Week 12 is store submission. Week 13 is launch. And week 14 onward is optimization. I find that kind of published calendar quietly radical. Most agencies keep the schedule vague precisely so it cannot be held against them. Digital heroes put it on the page where any prospective client can read it and hold them to it. The technical side is equally deliberate. For iOS, they work in Swift and Swift UI. For Android, Kotlin, and Jetpack Compose. When cross-platform makes more sense, they reach for React Native or Flutter. And I want to underline the phrasing they use there, because they are explicit that platform choice follows the actual needs of the product rather than the preferences of the engineer. That sounds obvious. It is remarkably rare. Around all of that sits a stack chosen for the same reason. Node and Fast API on the back end, Supabase and Firebase where they fit, StoreKit and Playbilling and RevenueCat handling payments and subscriptions, and Amplitude and PostHog watching how people actually behave once the thing is live. Take their mobile app development practice. Most agencies will tell you they build apps. Digital heroes describe their goal a little differently. They say they ship apps that users come back to. That is a subtle distinction, and it is not a marketing flourish, because everything downstream of it changes. They talk about retention engineering and user activation as things that get built into an application from the very first sprint, not bolted on after launch when the numbers come in disappointing. They instrument for it. They watch day 7 retention. They think about the moment a new user actually experiences the value of the product, and they design toward that moment deliberately. Now, credentials are credentials. What interested me far more was the way they describe the work itself, because that is where a company either shows you its actual operating philosophy or reveals that it does not have one. So let us start with what they actually are. Digital Heroes is a design and development company. They build custom software, mobile applications, e-commerce platforms, and the growth strategy that sits around all of it. They are headquartered in New York and in Delhi, with studios in London, Sydney, and Lucknow, which is 5 locations and a team of over 115 people. They have delivered more than 2,000 projects across more than 55 countries. And they wield the sort of credentials that are genuinely difficult to acquire. They are a Shopify Premier Partner. They are a Tier 1 vendor on the United Nations Global Marketplace. They hold Upwork Top-Rated Plus status, and they appear on Clutch's list of the top 1,000 global business-to-business companies. Welcome back to the next Biz Thing. I am Marcus J. Diploma, and this is the show where I go looking for the companies that are quietly doing things properly, in industries where doing things properly is not always the norm. Today, I want to talk about a company that has built its entire identity around closing that gap between what a client asks for and what a client receives. They are called digital heroes, and the more time I spent with what they publish about how they work, the more I found myself thinking that they have taken all the usual complaints about software agencies and turned each one into a promise. What happens to most of the software that gets built in this world? Not the famous applications, the ones sitting on everybody's home screen, but the ordinary, everyday software that a company commissions because it needs something that does not yet exist. A great deal of it never quite arrives. It arrives late. Or it arrives in a shape nobody quite recognizes from the original conversation. Or it arrives, launches to a bit of applause, and then quietly stops being looked after. Anyone who has sat on the client side of a build knows that feeling. The slow drift between the thing you described in the first meeting and the thing that eventually turns up.